All right. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the NFP Review Board for Tuesday, January 24th, 2023. Jamie, can you please do a roll call?
Yes. Colwick. Fuller.
Here.
Glasser.
Here.
Leto.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Sylvester.
Here.
Can I have a motion to excuse absent member Colwick?
So moved.
Support.
Any opposed? All in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Item C is adoption of the agenda, or tonight, are there any changes, suggested changes to the agenda as it stands here?
No changes from staff.
Nothing from board?
Nope.
All right, can I entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Agenda is adopted. Next, item D on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from November 22nd, 2022 NFP Review Board meeting. Can I entertain a motion to approve these minutes from November 22nd, 2022?
I move approval as submitted.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, minutes from November meeting are approved. Okay, now we'll move to item E, general citizen comments. So this is a comment period for any citizens who would like to make comments about NFP in general. Any general comments or questions, we will have a separate period to respond to the applicant. Let's see, item G, new business, 3921 Oakland Drive. So we'll have a separate time period for that. Are there any citizens present here that would like to speak about general NFP items? Okay, do we have any comments from the phone about general items?
No callers at this time?
Okay, thank you. All right, any comments from the directors at this time? Item F on the agenda.
I just have a general comment. Would it be possible on the website to post minutes separately from the agendas? I know they're posted as part of the packet, but because we don't meet every month, it makes it hard to find minutes.
Yes,
I speak from personal experience.
we will work on getting those posted.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other general comments from the board? All right, hearing none, we'll move to item G on the agenda, which is new business. So the first order of business today is the approval of the NFP site plan application for the construction phase of project located at 3921 Oakland Drive. Is there a presentation from our developer here today?
We can, but I can't tell if it's on either.
Maybe a little bit closer to the mic, see if that helps.
No, I don't think it's on.
Sounds like it might not be on.
If you could give us just 1 second, I know folks who are streaming the meeting won't be able to hear you very well.
Okay, try it now.
Testing, testing. Look at
I had the
that.
power the whole time. I was just
Uh-huh.
trying to build tension here. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. My name's Tim Stewart. I'm with Hurley and Stewart Engineers, representing our project team for the Kalamazoo Country Club. I want to introduce our team members that are here today. We have John Fulling from the Kalamazoo Country Club, who's going to get up and speak as well. And then we have JJ Henn from the ownership group. We have Todd McDonald from CSM, the construction management team. And then Eric Barkovich, who's our design engineer from my office, Hurley and Stewart. So what we want to do today is just give you kind of a brief overview of where we are with the project, since we haven't spoken with you in probably 7-8 months or so. So I've got a PowerPoint presentation that'll give you just a kind of a brief overview again, get you up to speed. And then we've got different elements that pretty much coincide with the review that Janie put together, and so we're trying to focus on the items that you need to review today. So let's go to the next slide. So again, just to bring you up to speed, what you'll see on the screen, this is the entire, the green and the blue are the two areas owned by the Kalamazoo Country Club. And the portion to the north is the existing course, and we're labeling that as a future phase. There are plans to improve that, to modify it, but that's not what we're looking at today, not what we've submitted our site plan for. The lower portion, the former Lakeside School, the kind of light blue, that's the current phase that we want to focus on here today. So next slide. So just to give you a development summary of what is proposed here for the former Lakeside property, we have 3 buildings, approximately an 87,000 square foot clubhouse, 21,000 square foot golf performance center, and a almost 35,000 square foot indoor tennis facility. And then on this property as well, we'll have an 11-hole teaching course, so kind of a short par 3, and other on-site amenities such as pools, gyms, playground. We are reusing the existing gym from the Lakeside School that's kind of in the lower area, more west on the site. But we've come a long way in terms of the development and what we've looked at over with you months ago. So next slide. So today we want to address the NFP review measures per your ordinance, Chapter 50, and I've kind of broken this down. So on the left, you see Phase 3. We're gonna talk about today plant selection and landscaping, water resources and riparian buffer, wetlands, and stormwater management. Now, if you remember, we came to you in April, May, whenever that was, and we already gained approval for trees and woodland removals, and slopes and grading, and then we also received a variance from the ZBA for those. We are in full conformance or compliance, whatever. We're meeting those requirements of your previous approval. So I'm not going to dwell on those too much today, but we can certainly talk about them if you like to. So next slide. So first I want to touch on the landscaping and the plant selection. So I'm going to turn it over to John Fulling from the Country Club, because he is the grounds guru and can talk more specifically. So John?
Tim, thank you. And hi again, I'm John Fulling. It's been a few times now, it's good. But as Tim said, yeah, a lot of progress since the last time we've met. And on both landscaping and trees and native plantings, we're finding that really making some remarkable progress. On landscaping first, so our goal the whole time, not just, this time, but the whole time has been to focus on predominantly native species. And so what we've done, just to let you know, we've gotten our designs from the landscape architects, some in-state, some out-of-state, but we've taken, and now we're working with our landscape consultant here in West Michigan, Todd Bruner, who is, we've looked at all the designs, changing the plant materials to more native species, local provenance. Todd is helping us by going out sourcing the plant species for all the landscaping and the trees, frankly, so that we can, again, have either almost all native species in our landscape areas or adaptive species for sure. And that's been our approach. So we will have formalized landscaping certainly around the buildings, but that's about where it ends. And so for the rest of the property, we're keeping with a much more native, simple, you'll see in a second here, the woodland planting scope, things like that. And everywhere else, simple. Multiple varieties, not one specific or too many of one variety to reduce the likelihood of disease or pest or things like that. So really, it's been fun to do, and sourcing, it's a big project, so there's a lot of sourcing going on, but it's been great. So we are working on that. Next slide, yeah. So the woodlands. You remember last time we had we said we would reforest at least 4.5 acres, right? A forest and 2.5 acres of native grasslands. So in getting the final design from our golf course architect, Andrew Green, we're able to actually go back in now, and I counted every last tree and spot that we're going to reforest on this property. And so from a tree standpoint, we're looking at 6.9. I think we promised 4.5. It is 6.9, and it is really 6.9 that we've got. And we actually have our mapped out every tree, not every specific tree in every specific spot, but we have a tree for every square inch of those acres that are going in based on the list that you'll see here in a minute. And then also grassland, I think we had 2.5 acres that we promised, and we're at 3.4 on that. We're also, again, still working with our wildlife biologist to source and plant all of those, the native grasses in those yellow areas that you see there. So here is our, I think it was maybe in the package, but our species. So this is a dry southern mesic Michigan, southwest Michigan forest. This list of both overstory and understory trees came from Michigan State, working with Jeff Ling, our arborist, to develop this. And this is specific to our area. We're going to, right now, Todd is helping us to source all of these locally. We can't tell you exactly how much of everyone, but our goal is to put every tree into this system because that's what the system is. But it'll depend on, again, a year or 2 years out, it'll depend on what's available, how big, our plan is to, all of the overstory trees in the 6.9 to plant B&B, ball and burlap, 1 to 3 inch. And then in a phase, we wouldn't do the understory stuff for probably a year or two after that, right? Because they need the structure of the overstory in order to thrive for the understory materials. And so we're going to put that in at a rate of 2 to 3. So if there's 420 trees, they'll be in the 8 to 1,200 of the understory plants. And that's what we're planning on now. So that is the list of species that we're planning on putting in. Should be next. That's it. Any questions for me at all? Okay. Thanks.
All right, so let me go on, just cover a couple other aspects of the project. So in terms of And as John mentioned, we've submitted a ton of information with our site plan. I think we had a 140-page set of drawings and supplementary information, drainage calculations, and so we're definitely going to be open to any questions you have on that material. So we're just kind of hitting the highlights here. In terms of the water resources and the riparian buffer regarding around the lake, and then the 20-foot buffer both around the lake and the wetlands, we have been very sensitive to that. We understand that from the ordinance standpoint, there is a maximum of 20% of semi-impervious cover that would be allowed within that buffer. We're not even close to that at all. As part of the site plans, there was a landscape plan that showed a boardwalk extending down to the lake's edge. That actually has gone away since we've submitted the drawing. So on the final set of drawings, that won't be there at all. And there was some landscaping planted at the lake's edge. And again, that's going to go away as well. So I think the significance of this is that we have no building, no walls, no new improvements at all within 120 feet of the lake. So we're really trying to stay away from that big slope going down to the lake and the lake's edge. And then we don't have any infrastructure, no roads, no storm sewer, no infrastructure at all related to the development within 75 feet of the wetlands. So we really tried to honor those buffer requirements, and we appreciate that that's important. Next slide, please. The other thing I want to just touch on that is probably new to you is we are moving forward with a lake source geo heat exchange system. And there's a lot of details that have been submitted to the city as well. The highlights of that is this is a closed loop system. It'll be pumped from the clubhouse down to the lake. We've surveyed the lake itself, identified the temperature changes, especially even in the late summer, and it was down to, I think, 43 degrees down at the bottom of the lake. So we are planning on utilizing that lake, providing a much more efficient system than a traditional well bore system in the golf course or in the property surrounding the clubhouse, and realizing some significant carbon footprint savings and cost savings on an annual and recurring basis. So let's go to the next slide. So this is just a diagram kind of identifying how that's going to work. This is a temperature gradient that you'll see, and then we're going to put the heat exchangers, which are really stainless steel, water and glycol supplied closed loop system. There's nothing in and out of the lake at all. This is completely closed, but that diagram kind of indicates what that's going to look like. And if you go to the next slide, here's a picture of those units. Okay, next slide, please. In terms of wetlands, nothing's changed along this route. There are, if you recall, there are a very small sliver of wetlands man-made from the existing lakeside school, about 0.17 acres. We applied months ago for an EGLE permit to eliminate those small wetlands, and we've been working back and forth with EGLE. I listed the reference number there, so all things are looking good in terms of our wetland permit, and that's moving forward. Next slide. So the last element that I wanted to touch on today is stormwater management. And we've been working hand in hand with Eric Satar from the city, met with him several times, had many emails going back and forth, but then we're also working with the state of Michigan for this system. Since we are discharging to the wetlands to the southeast, the state has jurisdiction over that, and as you may know, if you do drainage calculations, the criteria for those differs. The criteria that the state has is different than the criteria from the city. So we're balancing that, working with Eric, and then obviously that's a review exercise that is necessary for our site plan approval. But basically, this map shows our drainage area, which is just over 56 acres. The light blue represents the golf course and the driving range areas north and south of our entrance drive. You can see there's a good portion of the neighborhood to the north that does drain onto the property. We're accommodating and managing all the runoff from those areas as well. And then if you go to the next slide, I just put this in here because you can see that kind of royal blue, that's north of our circulation road. That is a retention area where we're going to really maximize infiltration since we have such good granular soils here, and have some storage, meet the requirements in terms of treatment, and then in large storm events, discharge to the wetlands, but in small storm events, everything would be kept in that retention, retention basin and infiltrated. And I think that's it. So, yep, that kind of concludes an overview. Certainly appreciate your attention, and I'll be open to any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. I want to start with questions from the board. Anybody want to jump in?
I have a couple just to start off. There was reference to a green roof in the plan set we saw. Is that, am I making that up?
I don't know about that. Eric, do you know about that?
Yeah, the green roof is still part of the plan. It's a partial green roof on the clubhouse and on the Golf Performance Center. And from a stormwater perspective, we're not considering that fully pervious. I think in conversation with Eric Sitar from the city, we were looking at that as still 75% impervious. But again, that's just on part of the clubhouse and on part of the Golf Performance Center.
That closed-loop geothermal system, you showed us a rendering of a heat exchanger. Where's the final position of that heat exchanger when this system is finished?
Yeah, I've got a picture of that. Can I get you to go back a couple slides? One more. One more. Keep going, one last slide. So if you can see that on the south or the bottom part of this picture is the clubhouse and the development. Those big circles are the lake, and those are the actual elevations as it drops down. So there's a field. The lowest spot is, I think it's 45 feet deep? 45 feet deep. And so we're going to put those, and there's as many as, I think there's 14 or 15 of those heat exchange units. That will be in the bottom of the lake on skis, essentially. And this is part of our EGLE permit. We've already applied for that. We've been reviewing that with EGLE. That was part of the delay on the wetland permit. We have rolled that into one overall joint permit application with the geothermal, the wetlands, the stormwater. So we've been working closely with Derek Harrelson from the state. Met with him out there and had conference calls over the last several months. So this is a relatively new system in terms of the state. So there's a little bit of a learning curve as well, but we have some really good examples and a really well thought through system, I believe.
Just out of curiosity, does that system have the potential to change the temperature of the lake?
We've looked at that. It has the potential to change it very minuscule amount.
Okay.
We have a study that was part of the information that was supplied to the city. Yeah. Is the potential to change the lake. That's a big concern. We've done an environmental study as well. ASTI Environmental are our sub-consultants that have worked on this project with us, and they did a kind of a lake effects of the geo-exchange system on the lake in terms of wildlife, riparian owners, temperature, the vegetation, and all that kind of stuff. And I think report was also submitted to the city.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yep.
There was a difference in the acreage amount of the woodland planting area from the plan set to the presentation tonight. It increased tonight, so we like that.
Okay.
But I want to make sure that 6.9 acres is the correct number.
Yep.
It says 5.4 on the plan.
We were guesstimating up until the point that we actually got the design from the architect. And then once I got the actual golf course design from the architect, I could actually go back through then and overlay it onto Google Earth and actually map out every square inch. And it is 6.9.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll jump in and make a couple of comments. Director Colwick couldn't be here tonight, but she typically comments on the rare species review items, and so just looking through that, things look good generally. I think the one thing that she commented on and that I'm seeing too is some questions around the, so it sounds like your Eagle wetland permit would be looking at discharge and infiltration in that southeast corner, just north of the drive. And I think that's where the closest connection to the wetland is, and the driveway goes in between those two things. And in addition to the rare turtles that have been documented in this general area, there's also common unlisted turtles like painted turtles and things like that that would be using the lake. And on an annual basis, we'll go from open water to wetland to upland to complete their life cycle, lay eggs and things like that. So especially if you have things like sand traps in the uplands or retention basin, they're going to be attracted to those kind of things. So I wonder if you could comment on one question I had related to that was how the discharge permit, if that was via a pipe or like a culvert under the road or something like that. And then the other question was if you thought about mitigation measures from car mortality, since the driveway basically cuts that connection between those habitats, either with signage or some kind of mechanism.
The first one, the stormwater system does discharge to that wetland finger that kind of comes up from the southeast by using a pipe. I think there's a 48-inch pipe under our drive that discharges towards the wetland. However, it's not open. It's not just an end section sitting there. It discharges to what we're calling an outlet structure, essentially a big concrete structure, and then we allow it to bubble up and then overflow essentially into the wetlands itself. So I don't know if you were going towards a route for turtles and other animals to follow, but I don't see them making that and getting in that structure and working around.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think one strategy would be like a box culvert that would go under the road that would encourage them to not interface with the road at all. And I think, assuming that that's not the case, signage and just, kind of a mindful speed limit as far as that goes. I've seen that used as well.
To be honest, I don't think we've spent a lot of time on that yet. We don't have provisions in there yet. We could certainly easily put signage up. The speed limit will be low. It'll probably be less than 20. I don't think that's been officially set yet either. The design speed of the road is 25, so people should not be flying through there. But we don't yet have provisions for animal movement there. We do, just so you know, that we do have a DNR permit that we've applied for the threatened and endangered species. It's not the turtles because it's really their habitat that would need to be protected, and that's not a mandated permittable thing. It's we will be, before we do any construction in that area during their active season, we'll be essentially shooing them along and doing an inspection. But there are some other potential grasses, a very small amount in the southwest corner that we're working with a DNR on right now to better understand if those were planted there on purpose, or if they're naturally occurring. And so we're working closely with the DNR on that right now.
Okay, great, thank you. I have one more kind of package of comments around the reforestation plan. And in general, I really appreciate the list. I appreciate not seeing usually when you see something in parentheses, it means it's a cultivar. And I think just the straight species would be the most appropriate for habitat restoration like you're proposing here. So definitely like that. It's a good looking list. A couple things that I would comment on are, unless they're resistant varieties, white ashes are gonna be vulnerable to emerald ash borer. That was on the list, so you might have a challenge finding that. The other comment is that we have oak wilt disease that's kind of popping up around southern Michigan, and typically the white oak varieties, white oak, bur oak, swamp white oak, are more resistant to that. So maybe consider that. I saw black oak and red oak, and I think northern pin oak which are all in the more susceptible group, just as a point of consideration for how many are planted. And then the other comments are related to deer and reforestation. So we have a really high deer density in Kalamazoo, and so that could present some challenges for you for the reforestation effort. So I would encourage you to tube every tree that's below 6 feet if you haven't already considered that, and give yourself some flexibility on the shrubs, because many of those will never exceed the deer height. So things like spice bush and pawpaw might not be exactly perfect for that system, but they'll be more deer resistant. Things like gooseberry that are on there that have thorns, maybe a little more resistant. So those are my comments around that.
Thank you, you're absolutely right. Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of plastic for the first 10 years out there. It's a lot of deer, and we've lost a lot of trees over the years. So yeah, we're well aware, but you're right. It has to be done because the deer will destroy a lot of trees.
Okay, I figured you were thinking about it. It's a big investment, 6.9 acres, so I just thought I would throw that out there. And then the other thing is that for all ball and burlap species, sometimes it can be hard to find some of these species that you've listed here. So you could consider bare root, which are generally more available for a lot of those native species. And even though they start smaller, they often have faster growth rates because the roots don't have to be cut off, and as long as they're tubed, they'll be protected in that way.
There's between that and then the idea of really not being able to get in there and manage too much. You know, if it was right here, we'd be able to do that in a 3.5 acre area where you've got a tree every 30 feet on center. You know, it's tough to but yes, I absolutely agree. So that's we're going to start with B&B, and we'll end up wherever we can end up to get what we need to get in there, for sure. And if we have to double, triple our bare root stuff, we'll do that, you know, to have a survivability.
Chair Leto, if I could make a comment too. The NFP standards don't have a standard for like a replanting, and so I would say you do have that flexibility as long as it's kind of in a plan put together by a professional, whatever you think has better survivability. You do have that flexibility, or whatever's going to be easier to source. So I think for the staff, we were looking at sort of a base density of trees, more of a planting specification. Some specs, but not tree by tree kind of level of plan.
I'll tell you exactly what I did is based the overstory on a 30-foot on center. You know, figure you're going to have 30, 40, 50-foot canopy. You know, if we put them in at 30, that might be a little bit of overkill, but you're probably going to have, some loss over time. Mm-hmm. So I thought 30 feet on center was pretty dense.
That's great. Thanks very much. So one quick question, then I'll let other board members jump in. The native grassland, the 2.5 acres, is that shown in yellow here, or is that a different designation? It was looking like the impoundment area that you showed in blue is also what's showing up on some maps in yellow, so I wasn't sure.
The yellow, yes, the larger yellow areas are the native, and Steve Allen, our wildlife biologist, working, I don't know if it's Steve, but working on, again, sourcing all of that as well. And it won't be all the same, right? Some we're going to have areas where we can do this, and others it'll have to be. But yes, those areas in yellow are those areas.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Just because I have a question about the grassland areas too, there's not a plant list for that available yet, is that correct?
We're developing, Steve is really developing that. We've got most of it. It'll depend again on areas. So where we can go big, we'll go big out of the way. Where it's in play, we won't be able to. There'll be two different sets of species lists for those areas. Really a native out of the way. Here's what we're never going to touch it, and maybe here's something that's closer to in-play areas that people might be walking around in, but it's okay for them to walk around in. Mm-hmm. And then there's the areas that we don't want that. And
that area has increased as well from what was required
Correct.
Now 3.4 acres, it looks like.
Yes.
Great. Will there be a management plan or a forestry plan for the replanted areas? I guess I'm remembering, if I'm remembering correctly from our May meeting, there were quite a few invasive species on the property, and I think, at least myself, that was what I felt a little more comfortable with some of the extra removals because there were a lot of invasive species. And so I'm excited to see the planting list, for a bigger planting area and a fully native planting list for the restoration area, but if there's not a management plan, it's just gonna turn back into invasive, so.
No, we anticipate the management plan is going to be pretty rigorous for 10 years until the point that we can let it go. The ultimate, the goal is to let it go and to never touch it again. But we're going to have to spend the first 10 years making sure that we don't have anything invasive come in and making sure everything stays alive. And we won't be able to bring large machinery in there, obviously, but it'll have to be by hand. Yeah, no, we know that. And what's in the golf world what we say? We're going to spend a heck of a lot of money to make it look like we don't spend any money. So.
Yeah, you might not be able to walk away after 10 years if I know.
Well, maybe
invasive
not.
species, but it'll be an ongoing, but just knowing that you are planning to keep after
Once
this.
everything is, again, long term, our goal was to jumpstart this by 50 years, right? So, I mean, eventually it would get to that list 150 years from now. Our goal is to jumpstart it by starting with that list, but you're right, you're gonna have to manage it because all that stuff's coming right back up. Nothing's been sterilized, clearly, and so we'll be in there taking it out.
What will be the, I know you have a tree layer and a shrub layer. What's the ground cover layer in the reforested area?
I think there were a number of different, oh Lord. We will be putting in ground cover, for sure, last, likely. And I don't even remember what they came up, a bunch of different plant, I haven't, it's been a while since I've seen it. But yes, there will be ground cover. Has to be, because it's all sand
Yeah,
right now.
and it'll be a native ground cover, fully native in the reforested area.
Yeah, native ground cover. Will also be supplement nutrient all of the trees that we put in, right? Because it's all sand. So again, manage to make it look like we're not managing. But yeah, the goal again, when that thing is done, it looks like a forest floor. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Or questions?
I have one more. I just feel like I'm monopolizing. Are you looking at any green certifications? I know there's a variety of green certifications for golf courses. Is that something you'll be pursuing? I know there are some requirements with those that might be helpful guidelines.
Yes. So we actually have been, we've already been a long time ago. I mean, Audubon certified. And then we switched over to, I don't know if you're familiar with Michigan, so the state has one, Michigan Turfgrass Environmental Stewardship Program, which we also have been certified in since 1999. We have just signed on also with Audubon to look at the signature program, which so regular Audubon sanctuary, cooperative sanctuary for golf courses is for an existing golf course or an existing property. Their signature program is much more detailed, but that is for construction, building a new golf course, and so you build it in conjunction with the folks at Audubon, and so it takes everything into account from obviously wildlife plan species, pollution prevention, water resource, all that, and so working with them to build the golf course in such a way that it starts out as environmentally friendly as a golf course can possibly be. So yes, the answer to that question is absolutely yes, and we always have been. People don't know that, but we always have been. That's what we do.
It's probably a question for Jamie. Just wanted to verify that the city has checked and they've met the minimum requirements for the native species. Is that right?
Will you repeat that once more?
Has the city checked to make sure that they meet the minimum required for the native species?
Yeah, so there are, the way the ordinance is written, the minimum planting requirements for any project in the city, right? There's a certain number of trees and shrubs that have to be planted along a street front. There are certain counts that need to be in parking lots, and then certain counts around the perimeter of the building. By my calculations, that's about 1% of the total plantings that they have planned for this property, and that doesn't include the woodlands and grasslands. So it's meaning that about 1% would have to be Michigan native. Everything that's being planted above and beyond, they provided the planting list for you all to take a look at. And so that's for you to approve. If you see species that would be harmful for the environment, then that's something that you can weigh in on and ask for a change. But the way the ordinance is written, it's species that they can be non-native and non-invasive, but not be known to be, harmful to the environment.
And excuse me if I could add, I specifically identify the city required landscaping along the foundation and in the parking lots is called out specifically separate from the other landscaping on our drawings too. So you may want to take a look at that in the L sheets.
Yeah, and we're married to nothing. If you see something on there that we'll change it out. Right? Happy to do it. No worries.
I'll just follow up on Jamie and Kyle's comments. Looking at the lakeside plantings and the woodland reforestation, that looks like a really, really great list. The sort of manicured plantings around some of the buildings and infrastructure, there were a lot of species there, so it was kind of hard to take it all in, and some of them I hadn't heard of, different varieties I hadn't heard of before. So we'll discuss amongst the board, but wondering if you'd be willing to take a second look at that list. There's quite a few that are not native, but potentially not invasive, but there are a number that are listed on, we sort of resolved to reference Midwestern Invasive Species Information Network. MISIN is the long acronym for that. List is kind of our go-to since new invasive species are popping up all the time, and we're not always familiar with all of them and all of the plants used in the landscaping trade. So wondering if you'd be willing to go back and look at that list and either replace the invasive species with native species or non-invasive, but just take kind of another good faith look at that list.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the things that Todd Bruner is helping us with. Again, you have the architects who are putting kind of this stuff together, some maybe not from the area, but he's one of those guys, he's looking at it going, yeah, no, yes, no, let's change to this, this is better. So we're absolutely doing it, and I will tell him, and I'm sure he knows about that, but I will remind him about that list and absolutely go through. Like I said, we're married to nothing on that formalized landscape plant list, and we're happy to put in, it's better for everybody, it's better for us. I mean, so, happy to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Well,
I have a few plants to eliminate. Does it make sense to read them into the minutes tonight or just have Jamie send an email?
We'll probably want to read them into the record in the motion if you have some specific species. I would hope it wouldn't be super long, but
At 4, I want to
excellent.
take.
I think we can manage that, yeah.
Part of my hesitation with that is that there's a lot there, and I don't know if we've cross-referenced all of them. So maybe we could provide some examples pending a full cross-reference of that. I don't know, did you have a count of how many were there?
I counted 4 that I definitely wanted to take off, but yeah, I didn't go through the whole list, so.
Yeah, and don't even think twice about it. Cross them out, send them, they're gone.
Hypothetically, couldn't we make that a condition of any approval that this cross-reference be made so that we don't have to try and think of each and every item?
Yeah, so you could make a motion that you approve the site plan with a note added that, and that's typically how it's covered, right? They'll put a note into the landscape plan that all species have been cross-checked by that missing website, and they're not, planting any of those. Yes, that's probably the best way to address it.
We're just saying, I mean, we're 2 years away from, so we can absolutely, we can come up with a great plan.
Great, thank you. Any other comments from the board? All right, before we move to thinking about a motion or conditions for this application, I want to open up for public comments specifically for agenda item G that we are currently discussing at 3921 Oakland Drive. So if there are any public comments regarding 3921 Oakland Drive, please come to the microphone at the front of the room, state your name, address, and then you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments. Any comments from anybody here in the room today? Okay. Are there any comments from the phone regarding agenda item G specifically?
No callers at this time.
Okay. Seeing no further comments or discussion from the board, can I entertain a motion to approve the NFP site plan application for construction phase at 3921 Oakland Drive, pending a cross-reference of the landscaping list with the Midwest Invasive Species Information Network list?
I so move that.
Several of us will move that, but I speak first. So moved.
Okay, I second that motion.
And then can we have a roll call vote on that, Jamie?
Yes. Fuller? Yes. And if you can make sure to speak into the microphone.
Yes.
Glasser?
Yes.
Leto?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Sylvester?
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. And appreciate you working with us and entertaining our thoughts here. Okay, moving to item H on the agenda, old business. Don't see any here. Jamie, is there any other old business?
No old business at this time.
Okay. Item I on the agenda are staff updates. Sounds like we're still seeking applications for the Board of Directors.
That is correct. The current NFP review board is down to 6 members. It's a 7-member board. We've been putting out some advertisements on social media. It's up on the website. We're seeking applications. At this time, I have 2. The city's received 2 applications. And so I would recommend here in the next month, we'll give it one more push, advertise to any of your networks, any folks who are joining us today. You can apply through the city's website, and there's a committee of this board who's going to look at those applications, I would say, here in the next month so that they can get some recommendations forward to this board.
Okay. Is there any present members of the board that are close to being termed?
We will look at, there would be some expirations here in the first half of this year for sure. You would all still be able to sign on for another 3-year term if members choose to do that. So I'll reach out to anyone who's getting close to their term expiring, figure out if there's anyone who's not interested in another term, so we'll know any of our additional vacancies. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Anything else for staff updates?
That's all.
Okay. Item J on the agenda, any announcements, community relevant updates from board members? Okay. With that, we can adjourn the meeting.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for leading tonight.